There are people that buy cars that they know will be appreciated by others, and there are some people that buy collections of cars for investment purposes. And there are some people that buy cars that probably would have been good investments if they hadn't modified them, but they decide to modify them exactly how they want to modify them. And that's what we have in this instance. This is the car cave of a chap called Phil Morrison, who's one of the founding fathers of the DriftWorks company. I've known Phil a really long time, and I've been wanting to come here to explore his eclectic car cave for flipping years. And finally that time has come. So come on in and let's have a really detailed look around what is a beautiful, fantastic car cave. I'm Jonny Smith, welcome to the Late Break Show. Phil, it's been a really long time.
It has.
Since, well, I've never actually come here.
No, you haven't been here. No.
I have never been here. I mean, I know about your cars extensively. I follow you on social media. It's bizarre, isn't it? That we,
It really is.
we met a long time ago.
Yeah.
In fact, it feels like hundreds of years ago. I was driving here this morning thinking, what year was it that we were on fifth gear doing Bedford Rascal drift trucks?
I mean, you're challenging an old man's memory here, but it has to be sort of circa 2009, 2008 maybe, something like that.
I bet it was.
Yep.
I bet it was.
A long time ago.
A really long time ago. And it's probably, I mean, like DriftWorks was a young company then.
It was. We were still working out of a storage facility, which sort of allowed us to expand a little bit. And before we bought this place, this was actually, we bought the first building in 2009 and then this side a little bit later on, so not long after that.
So this has evolved quite a lot since then.
Yeah, somewhat. With the collection as well.
I used to have black hair. I used to have hair back then. These are a combination of your own cars and DriftWorks kind of demonstrator cars. What would you call it?
It's probably a pretty good word to use. Like things like the E30 M3 and the drift cars. They're all DriftWorks cars, sort of to demonstrate the parts that we sell. But yeah, then also through the business success, get a bit of money, and I end up wasting it on cars in my own time as well, sort of my own money on everything. So yeah, some of the other ones like the Lamborghini, the various Porsches they're all my own cars. Those ones.
I want to ask you, what was I don't even know what your first car was.
Mini.
Was it?
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it. Look at the size of me now. Yeah, it was an original Mini. I hate that you have to call them classic Minis now, but my first two cars were Minis. My first Mini was terrible. My second Mini was quite cool. De-seamed boot, no boot or anything like that, and probably, I don't know, a 22-inch sub in the back where the seats would normally be. It was terrible.
So fully modified.
Oh, really, really was, yeah. But I'd done that with everything sort of throughout my life before, cars, from bikes and, whatever it was when I was a kid, model planes and all sorts of stuff like that. It was always about changing it to be my own.
Yeah.
And, starting with cars, that was a very, very slippery slope.
Well, DriftWorks has become like a household name now.
It was there at the beginning, really, in the UK particularly. My first S14 was 2001, I bought that. And sort of, again, it evolved extremely quickly into something that sort of helped DriftWorks grow. Yeah. And my success in competition as well. In the early days.
Well, you can drive. There you go. You said you do things averagely. You clearly drive above average.
I mean, I'm not the best, but I can wheel.
Yeah.
In certain situations, I can get around.
Well, talking of wheeling, we must talk about the BM.
Yeah.
E30. It's not a real M3.
It is a real M3.
It is a real M3.
It is a real M3.
Shit.
Yeah.
I should have known that. It's been a long time.
I'm not the guy that took an S14 out of it. I bought this as a project, and it was an abandoned ex-race car with missing roof and all sorts of stuff like that.
Okay.
But it's a really cool chassis, genuine M3. Had genuine M3 arches on it before I got my hands on it and chopped them off. And it's the car that confuses the hell out of everybody because it says DriftWorks all over it. Has nothing to do with drifting at all, apart from occasionally going sideways in it a little bit. But
So it's
this is a track car
built for circuits, right?
Yeah,
right.
So I've got a love of drift and a love of track. Spend a lot more time doing the track stuff nowadays.
This is quite a thing under here.
Yeah, it's S65 out of the E92 M3, the last proper M car engine that was ever made, because none of that turbo stuff counts. It's all nonsense.
Okay.
Offend every single viewer of this program. But yeah, naturally aspirated M cars ended with the S65 as far as I was concerned. So yeah, it is a high revving V8 4-litre standard engine, but with an Venturi airbox on it, carbon airbox. Obviously all the custom work to get it to fit and exhaust, etc.
Yeah.
And then it's connected to a Drenth sequential gearbox. But every part of this car is modified, changed, my own suspension design, my own front wings, my own rear quarters, my own bonnet, everything to kind of keep it looking as much like the original M3 that it was, but it has, a lot more track to it, a lot more width, a lot more tyre capability.
I totally forgot it was a real M3. Totally forgotten. I feel embarrassed now. I started the video with a whoopsie. This is the car that sort of breaks Instagram, isn't it? This is the real Instagram breaker. It's a modified Montelago. I mean, there's a lot to say here. What I would say before we delve into it is that Phil and DriftWorks are on Instagram, and they have a really good YouTube channel, which he can promote now.
Thank you. The YouTube channel is DriftWorks, pretty easy, and on Instagram we're DriftWorks, but a lot of the stuff that's sort of not specifically drift is often on my own Instagram, which is Phil Morrison DW.
Was this a crap car when you bought it?
It was terrible. It was the worst in the country by a very long way. It was. You probably know the business Copart.
Yes,
that's where I found it.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It was terrible. It was in one piece, but it had been damaged, had been crashed, badly repaired, left sitting, I guess, for a few years, and then put up for sale through Copart at. This is the price.
Salvage car.
It's kind of like it was a fully working and MOT'd, ready to go car in theory, in London, and I just went down and bought it, drove it back, ended up for the last 5 miles of the journey on half an engine of cylinders, every single light on the dash. It was crabbing towards people the entire way down the motorway from London. It was absolutely dreadful and completely terrifying.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So run us through, because there's a shitload of mods on this,
Yeah.
which we can't cover completely in this video.
No. Well, there's lots on my channel if people want to check that out. But essentially, at the core, this is a road-going GT1 inspired Murcielago. It is the parts on the front that you see, so the fenders or wings, as we call them, front bumper, headlights, part of the side skirts, back bumper and wing are off the actual 2009 Le Mans car that raced Le Mans. They're the actual parts off it.
Wow.
Didn't do very well, but it is.
But it looked amazing.
The RGTs, specifically the GT1 version for me, are the most mental, dumbest, craziest race car on the planet. Absolutely love them. And a big part of that was also the noise that they made with the V12 engine, which is why we've converted my LP640 engine to run 2 banks of E46 M3 throttle bodies, independent throttle bodies.
What's it like to drive? I mean, be honest.
You have to be decent at driving low cars, let's put it that way, because it's not just the height of the splitter, it's the extension of any low car. You can drive a low car with a short extension like M3s. But anytime you've got projection like that out the front and it's low, it's quite a challenge. So you choose your path. It does have the original hydraulic nose lift, so I can get over stuff as I need to, but it looks atrocious, so I weave around more than that. Cool story on this. Luke Dunkelwalk, who designed the car and was involved in the RGT as well with Writer Engineering, who do the race cars. He contacted me, he sent me an email saying, that's really cool. He said, that's brought back so many good memories of everything I did at Lamborghini. Because obviously he's moved on to very cool things that he does nowadays. But to be contacted out of the blue by the original designer of the Murcielago to say, that's cool.
Surely that makes all these hours worth.
Oh, it really did, yeah. It really, really does. No, one of my favourite things, and quite an achievement from everybody, not just from me, from all the people involved in the build as well.
E46 M3, my favourite M3.
Mine too.
My favourite looking. I just think that this was sort of the zenith.
So yeah, this is, I mean, it's probably best if we just show you, but it's a little bit different to when I first did it, but this is the work in progress currently.
Oh, bloody hell. Wow.
So yeah, I bought this car in 2008, I think, and kept it as a pretty normal / modified E46 M3 that I used to go to the Nürburgring and all sorts.
Yeah.
And then in sort of 2010, 2011, decided to do the V10 conversion, the S85 V10 conversion. And
it's a big
again,
undertaking, that.
oh, it's massive. If there's ever an engine that you shouldn't fit in an E46, or a lot of BMWs, it's this. It's so massive, and these weren't designed for a V, although you did get the GTR versions.
Yeah.
But yeah, massive job. Hugely costly at the time as well. There's a lot more info and a lot more easily obtained engine management systems and stuff like that nowadays. But back then, this was quite a unique, huge undertaking.
I remember that was the thing. It was not just getting it in; it was getting it running properly
and still working as I wanted it to as well. So this was a sort of a car that was my daily driver, but I did take to the Nürburgring, and there's quite a decent clip of this doing the main straight at the Nürburgring, which is one of my favourites. One of the most nut-sounding, relatively normal-looking cars out there, I think. Obviously, complete work in progress. There's so much more to go in here to make it work. The most common question is, how are you going to heat insulate that, etc. It's all in hand. But yeah, this work of art is made by Celeritech, and this was part of a 3D scanning process that Jay and I did, just taking photographs, photogrammetry, sent it to our friend at Celeritech in Holland. He then put it into CAD, designed this all in CAD, and sent it after lots of back and forth on the design process and what I wanted it to look like, etc. And he made this and sent it to us, and it fit straight on.
My God.
Which is just, we were more than a little pleasantly surprised.
It's like Medusa's hair.
Yeah.
All hail King Rollo. It's been ages since I've seen this. In fact, I don't even know how long you've had this. You've had it a long time.
It was, it was 2012. I think the build started on this and sort of didn't really come out to play properly because it was such a massive build until sort of 2014, I think, something like that. Yeah, loosely based on an 86 or an 86, a Hachiroku. That's what it started life as. And it's had sort of an integration of NASCAR parts to start off with.
That's right. Yep. Did you buy a NASCAR, or the remains of a NASCAR, from Rockingham?
But that was what it was. So it's an ASCAR. It's basically the weak source version that still has a lot of the same parts as a real NASCAR. But yeah, the Rockingham ASCAR series, it was an LS powered, full tube frame, Winters axle, Jericho gearbox, sort of proper race car that we bought and thought, well, that's rear-wheel drive live axle. An 86 is rear-wheel drive live axle. I'm sure we can somehow gel some of this stuff together. And that was the original concept. And obviously, most of the parts from that ASCAR eventually ended up getting replaced for something better, slightly more suitable. But this would have never existed without that stock car, basically.
Amazing.
Yeah, so this is now a 7.4 litre LSX powered. Probably better show you.
Let's have a bloody look.
So,
is there any steel left on this?
No. Well, roof, A-pillars, all the correct bits for basically regulation. It is still essentially an A86 underneath.
Gosh.
But just heavily reinforced, and then with a massive lump of Chevrolet motor in it. This is our sort of lesser engine, if you like. We've got a lightweight aluminium block version that we need to put back in it. But essentially, Gen V ITBs, fully naturally aspirated, dry sump, daily engineering, lots of other associated bits, and makes about 720 horsepower in this. So yeah, and it's quite quite a wild ride.
I was going to say, what does it drive like? I mean, this is not a road legal car.
No. It is, for want of a better word, terrifying.
Is it?
It's a spectacle. Every time this car comes out, people like watching it because it's either going to do something incredible or I'm going to crash it. So people love that type of stuff. You know, it's an amazing thing to drive. Not competitive really, but people absolutely love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, this is like one of the cars that is associated with DW. It is a DriftWorks beast, isn't it?
It is indeed. Yeah.
It's so effing wide. I'm surprised you got it through that massive door. It is ridiculous.
For the size of the body, it really is, but it's actually not that much wider than the original car. It's a 1992 911 turbo, obviously, 964 turbo. This is one of the early Rollo kits, so it's not hugely wide.
Really?
It's done in 2008 in Japan at Rollo. The bodywork was. It's actually a promo deck car. It's like a big high-end tuning company in Japan.
Yeah,
really well known over there. And where Rollo might be a bit more sort of hacksawy, this was built to a really high standard. But yeah, the fronts are about 30 mil wider than the standard turbo arches that were on it.
Yeah.
And the backs are maybe about 40 mil. It's really not that much bigger because they were crazy, like very nicely shaped cars to start off with.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I fell in love with this when I first saw it come to auction in Japan, was because at first glance I couldn't tell whether anything had been done to it, and that to me is a really good sign of something that's been styled really well. Is you question whether it's still standard or not.
So were you looking for a 911 or were you looking at Japanese auctions for Japanese stuff?
I was looking for a 911 project. I had a really silly idea about doing a rotary conversion. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
A rotary engine?
Yeah, I was good. That was kind of it. I had the start to an idea in my head about doing that, and it would have been pretty cool at the end, but this came up and I immediately saw it and I just completely fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And I actually lost it. I didn't bid in time at auction. I didn't manage to get it. And I had a friend of mine at Power Vehicles essentially chase the car down for the following 5 months, I think it was, something like that, and actually ended up finding out who bought it and the trader that it was then for sale at in Japan.
Really?
And I made the deal happen. And yeah, it had its running issues. It ended up having an engine issue that meant that I had the engine rebuilt by Fernsport in Silverstone. Promodetta engine builders, they're really good at what they do, so a lot of the components were really good, but it needed this freshen up, and it was one of those cases of, while we're here, we'll give it a bit more power. But
how powerful is this?
It's 600 wheel horsepower now.
Really?
Yeah, it is. It's quite a civilized thing to drive off boost. It has modern turbo technology and decent intercooler and stuff like that. But it's running Haltech ECU, so modern stuff and runs really nicely.
Yeah.
But yeah, off boost, it's relatively nice to drive, apart from the clutch, which is a little bit aggressive. But then when it comes on boost, it comes on like the old school, it's just nothing,
sledgehammer,
and then just an explosion of torque, basically.
We're hopefully, boding well, if I can get insurance, we're going to be taking this out on the road for a different video. If that video is already live, it will be above my head and or at the end of the video. But yeah, this is the one we're hopefully going out in. It's not raining either. So for me, driving a powerful car not in the rain, it's going to feel great. I forgot to say, I mean, this video is not about DriftWorks promotion at all, but obviously we're stood next to a load of DriftWorks products, and that room next door is all warehouse, DriftWorks warehouse, isn't it?
Yeah, the bit that pays the bills.
That's the bit that pays the bills. This is the bit where you hose the money away.
Well, lots of people think we're just a garage. They think that we work on other people's cars, but we don't. It's just, this is for R&D and prototyping and stuff like that, and fun. Storage, the obsession, basically, and why we got into that business in the first place was building dumb cars, loving doing what we do. Yeah.
So this is actually, I think, alarmingly stock.
It is for one of my cars, yeah.
Yeah.
It's because it reset things for me in terms of standard cars. with coming from E46 M3, using that on track, I moved into this, and it's basically like everything that you do when you buy another type of car and modify it to make it good for track and road.
Yeah.
Well, Porsche have done it for you, except they've done it better than
Turnkey.
anybody else could do because it's Porsche.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's essentially, this is a modified car when you buy it. That's how I look at it. It's what you do to a car: fit bucket seats, massive brakes, really good suspension, get the ride height right, roll cage, and an amazing naturally aspirated engine. So it comes pretty modified as standard, and I've just done my own little tweaks to it. But this is actually for sale. I've put this up for sale recently because I've got my 992 GT3, which is my daily driver.
Yeah, which is great. It's just outside.
Absolutely phenomenal car. And lots of people question why I'd get rid of this and not get rid of the 992, because that's the one that I use every day. That is my daily driver. That's what I'll choose to get in every day of the week. And then kind of the other end of the scale, I've got the 964 for my old school fun and really silly driving experience, and this sits in the middle of those two cars, and that means that I very rarely grab the keys for it anymore, which I think is a real big shame, because it's such a stunning car. It's so special, being the release colour in the UK. It's 997-2 narrow body, which in my opinion is the best of GT3s that have ever been made.
It's not too wide.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel terrifying to drive. You can use it every day because the ride quality is good. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it literally changed my perspective on all cars getting listed. It changed everything, and actually a lot of this car and what it does has filtered into my other builds, including right into the drift cars and everything like that, because my perspective changed the moment I got into this car.
It's for sale. Troll them on the internet. I remember this car when you had it the first time. Every time we cut the camera, Phil says, yeah, I've owned that car twice. I've owned that car twice. You've owned like half the cars in here twice.
This one we just bought back as well, hence why it's not in the same condition presentation as some of the other ones. But yeah, we dragged this back from Europe 5 days ago.
Oh wow, that fresh.
And I haven't seen it before that. I hadn't seen it for 11 years. And this was a massively significant part of DriftWorks, the business and the builds and everything. So, and it's kind of been preserved in Greece, where it was.
How strange.
Amazingly well. There's a lot of stuff that I look at on this car and just think, my God, we've come a long way since we fabricated that. And, many things that I would change. But at the core of it, it was one of the first 2JZ powered cars in the UK and Europe. It is pushed back through the firewall significantly.
So the end of the engine is about here?
Yeah, sort of through to the dash there.
Yeah.
It's got lots of extremely custom work on it, chassis-wise as well. Again, I reiterate, for the period, this was really nuts. There's lots of people who said it before that kind of claim to create cars that they call themselves the game changer. But this, I think a lot of people have said to me that this really was sort of a level up over everything that had been done before, and led the way for some of the most extreme builds that you see sort of nowadays. And the recipe of like a 2JZ in an S body is the most competitive drift recipe that you can get over the years. So such an important part of DriftWorks, the business. I had to see whether I could save it, because it's not, you can't use it in competition.
You can't?
No, you can't, because it's got the bulkhead modifications.
Right.
So since this, we got 3 years of use out of this. I've won a lot in it, a UK championship and many podiums. And since that, they brought in a rule with no firewall modifications, so this is not eligible for any competition. And I've got my S15 practice car here, which I built many years after I sold this, because I missed the way that this drove. This is, in comparison to the 86, which is a completely wild, terrifying ride, this I'm very comfortable in, or at least I was at the time.
This is like a friendly drift car.
Yeah, this is an extension of me, and I can place it really well. The 86, I go where it wants me to go,
really?
Essentially.
That's like a bucking bronco kind
It is, it's wild. And this, I wanted to just bring back some of this flavour into a slightly more simple recipe. It ended up again being a little bit more of a build than it was supposed to be, but that's SR20 powered still, and that one's about 420 horsepower. 400? No, it's more than that. Nearly 500 horsepower, that one.
Is it?
But yeah, great recipe. I think I'm going to be selling that one as well, though, because I kind of don't really have place for two S15s, but I'll make the decision later.
Remember, kids, smoking skills. Now we're going practical. We've got a commercial vehicle involved.
But yeah, these two cars here, the Hilux and the Yaris here, they're James's, my business partners. Who was your competitor?
He was my mentor.
Tom? Yeah, he was with Tom and I was with you, helping you build the Rascals. But yeah, James, he's a little bit more sensible with cars than me.
Is
but,
he?
Yeah, from time to time comes up with a really silly idea. So this is what's known as the High Five. It's a 1972 Toyota Hilux with MX-5 turbo running gear in it. They say it's
not a Hilux anymore. It's a very low lux.
Yes, indeed.
It's cool.
But yeah, it's as a package, it worked out really well. It's even got rid of the live axle at the back. It's an MX-5 subframe.
Is it?
Yeah,
nice.
And it's MX-5 front, kind of just slotted in there by our friends at Dynotalk next door, who do a lot of the work on our cars, which I haven't mentioned before.
This looks great. And
James has done some pretty wild drifting in this car at Anglesey, etc. And just look at the thickness of the door panels. It's 1972. It's tiny. It's not something I'd particularly be keen on crashing. I am terrified of it. Well, my knees are around the steering wheel when it's out. Amazing fun, like really cool little recipe. And unlike James, it did escalate a bit, this, much like one of my projects, which is really cool. And this is the GR Yaris, which, is pretty boring nowadays. I imagine for most people, this is just simple recipe track toy for him. We're a big seller for KW coilover, so it's got Club Sports on it, got SSR wheels, which we distribute, and a simple recipe just to go extremely fast, reliably, with no drama, which is what he wanted. So he didn't want to spend ages working on the car, just do the driving. And then onto this.
Yeah.
So one you're familiar with.
I walked in here and it was like, it's basically my car. I know.
Yeah, you have to stand back quite far to see it.
You do have to stand back. I don't know if I could get back far enough. I mean, that's the shot that you've got on camera, the profile of this, the 64 Impala decked is just so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's such a lovely shape.
64 Impala SS. I decided to build it as my wedding car, not my wife's wedding car, my wedding
Your
car,
wedding car,
obviously.
I can relate.
Yeah, it was just an excuse to end up in a 6.4 lowrider, but it's a fake lowrider. It's on air.
Is it? Of course it is on air.
Sacrilegious.
I know.
But I have owned two hydraulic lowriders and they are hilarious fun. Probably a little bit old for that level of hilarity nowadays, and the associated risk that comes with it as well. So this being on air, it sits the way I want it to. It's pretty comfortable. We've got a load of Ride Tech suspension stuff on it that I've done to it. It's a big block in the front, so it's a big old weight in the nose. And yeah, it's massively overpowers the rear wheels at any occasion.
And you're on 13s.
It is ridiculous.
The tiny little 13s.
Yeah, and a tiny axle as well, which is why it's probably best that it's on tiny little wheels, because it's a lot of torque. But yeah, it's just an amazing thing that this is one of the rare occasions where I haven't got too carried away, because I'd describe it, or it was described to me when I bought it, as a 10-footer. Don't look too close. It looks amazing from 10 foot away.
10 feet,
but you'll find issues with it, with the paintwork, bodywork, some rust bubbles here and there. So yeah, I've tried not to rip it to pieces and do a full resto on it, because that would be
well done.
Yeah,
well done.
Proud of myself.
Well, you don't know that I own one of these. I do. I've had it since 2003, which is 20 years ago. Terrifyingly, and I've still never driven it. The engine's never started. And it's still not finished. So we'll gloss over those three terrible tragedies. Long been a dream of mine. I think we're of a fairly similar age, where the whole rap scene back in the 90s, when low riding was at its zenith, it was really influential. Boys in the Hood film, really influential, with Ice Cube's 63. But the 64 is the one.
It's the one.
It is the one.
Yeah.
It's
the one. The either side of it, zero interest.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely zero interest. The 64, that's it.
It
was always the one for me. When it came up, I absolutely had to have it. Unfortunately, this is another one that I am thinking about getting rid of, because I just don't use it very often.
Yeah.
And I just think it's such a shame that it just sits here in the unit and nobody sees it.
It needs to be seen.
That it is one of those. It's so beautiful. It's so spectacularly large.
Yeah.
The proportions of it are absolutely ridiculous. And
So it's possibly for sale.
yeah. Well, it is for sale. Realistically,
It is for sale.
I have too many cars.
And not enough time.
It's that sad old story that's not sad at all. I've had a kid and I have a lot of interest in spending time with my kid nowadays, whereas before I'd spend every hour I could in the workshop. I've got enough project cars to keep me going for the rest of my life, and you know they mean a lot to me, and each one of them's got a massive story to them. So some of them I have to be realistic about and just say it might be sensible to not have this for a while, let somebody else.
I admire that. I admire that, and that's why I wanted to feature Phil's shed of cars, because it is a glorious shed of cars. It really is.
Thank you, much appreciated.
So, and well, I'll come back in another 15, 18 years, or whatever it's been. I can't remember how long it's been. Stupid amount of time. But I hope you've enjoyed this Car Cave edition of the Late Break Show. Follow him on social media and DriftWorks, and if you haven't already subscribed, you're a fool. You really ought to.
I have.
Yeah, he has.
It's excellent.
And everything. So, and I also do a podcast that I never promote. It comes out every Monday. It's called Smith and Sniff. It's vaguely about cars, but it's mostly about toilets and genitals.
Again, excellent. Highly recommend.
Yeah. Thank you.